Now to begin, I prefer standing, but not all people will want to stand. So hold it like this, and I'm going to take up where some of the red is over there. Even though this is still a little bit damp, no problem. Okay, so right to the bottom, but you want nice and good. You see how I'm really pressing down very, very hard to make sure that the paint sticks. It's no good going a little bit lightly over the top. Oh, you will have a terrible product in the end. You see how I can move anything around wherever I want it to be. Again. And in this case, all I'm doing is following the lovely design of the original designer, which unfortunately I cannot give credit for because it was not on the fabric. And I've had this fabric for a very long time, but I've never known who the designer was, and I really would love to. Okay, so just giving you an example there. You see my empty one over here? Now, do not forget to stretch. Must stretch both ways, always. Okay, now I can see that I could add a couple of, and really when you are doing dots, really put it in like this, hard. Really hard. You really must attach all of the paint to the fabric. Again, pull. That one is pretty well solid there now because it's been around a long time. Now, always make sure that you are comfortable so that you don't put your hand over where you've painted. This one here, I can see, and because it's got black, as an artist, I know that the black is going to give the shadow. So I will try and put my line, if I'm doing it there, so that the black shadow, or highlighting line you might want to call it, shows up. You see how I'm very often going over the same line. Now, I do not need to tidy up any of those little bits with my brushes, because I know that I will keep on for quite some time stretching the fabric to make sure, giving it a last check, and that's enough. So off it goes. I'm going to do a little bit more in red on this one. Notice, girls, that I always leave it open so that I can slip out if they become wet, and they will become wet when you're sitting them. You need to take out these pieces of recycled paper, but just leave your insert background. Same paint. I like to take off the top because you can get a bit of a glob there. Really hard against the fabric. Really hard. Really hard. Now, I will go out something like that. Fill in there where it missed a bit. really hard against the fabric. If you want it to last through scores of washings, lots of use, lots of throwing around and hanging around for many long years. Now, notice I put my paint back there because I can see that this is a bit dodgy. Right on the end there, not good enough. Will never survive. A tiny fraction of water, which you can see that I'm wiping off, just to tidy up that. There's a tiny bubble there. Normally speaking, I wouldn't bother about one, but I'm just showing you. Try not to worry about bubbles too much, except keep your eye on them at the end. Stretch, stretch. Other side. Take off the top gunk. And again, keep your eye on the pattern of the designer originally, and especially because you've got black there. Now, I am going to start setting this in. So I'm going on the fabric piece and the cushion, both. Now I can feel that this is getting rather heavy, and when you're doing a lot of work, sometimes it can get pretty hard on your thumb and your finger, but most particularly on your thumb. Keep your eye on those bubbles. You don't want bubbles. Now I want to make sure I keep it consistent. In other words, when I say consistent here now, as I'm progressing along this one, if you get bubbles, I can see a couple of bubbles here in the silver. So, as I'm here, you can't avoid bubbles all the time. It's just the nature of this technique. Occasionally you will. So I've filled up those ones, but make sure you contact with that paint. And so go to the end, for example, because it's right in front of me. Over here, stretch. I know this is perfect along here, but I can see a tiny little bit there which is not perfect. So dry off my brush, which was sitting in the water. As I say, you really want to do this to the driest you can possibly do in most cases. Not always, but in most cases. Re-stretch. Put that out of your way so that your hand doesn't destroy it. I can see that that is getting really messy over there because it's got attached to another cushion, and it's pretty awful over there. And so I've got green, so I remind myself that I've got to patch that up with green over there or some other colour, but I'm only doing red. So I can see these bits down here that I really want to do, and I don't worry about that in something like this. So I will give it really a lot of paint to cover up those frays, which can't be avoided with some fabrics. It's just the nature of the fabric. But never leave an area when you can possibly finish it off. And I can see that this is an area here I can right now finish off. Tiny little area. And that means that this will all be set in according to the dictates of the paint. It's getting really hard to press down on the paint now to have it come out, which happens. But don't shake it too much if you can avoid it, because that just creates bubbles. Sometimes you get to a point where you feel as if your fingers, your thumb in particular, can't do any more. And you have to open it up and get rid of that glob, because it's paint and sometimes it will harden in the middle and the glob accumulates at the bottom. Now, because that's getting really hard to use, I'm going to stop there on this one. I've stretched it enough times, but you see this one doesn't match this one, so I know I'll only have problems with that, so I'll come and match this one and this one before I put it away. And I'll use this one because it has the cardboard securely underneath. And next day, this is where we're up to.